If everyone in a state wants something, go ahead and have it.
So if everyone in Alabama wanted slavery back, you'd be okay with that?
Sure. If everyone in the state wants it, go ahead.
Slavery is still legal in America, and it's on the November ballot in 5 states: Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee, and Oregon. Yeah, you read that correctly. Shout out to Hollywood Unlocked. Slavery is on the ballot for 5 different states. And just to clarify, so you know what I'm talking about, on November 8th, voters in Alabama, Louisiana, Oregon, Tennessee, and Vermont will decide whether to remove this punishment exception for involuntary servitude from their state constitution. And for y'all that don't know, the 13th Amendment reads, the United States federal government shall prohibit slavery except for punishment and conviction of crime. It is not ironic that the descendants of slaves are most likely to find themselves convicted in a punishment of crime. If you live in Alabama, man, make sure you get registered to vote by October 24th. If you live in Louisiana, make sure you register to vote by October 11th. If you live in Oregon, make sure you register to vote by October 18th. If you live in Tennessee, make sure you register to vote by October 11th. You gotta have the same energy, if not more energy, that we have for presidential elections during this midterm election, because history right here.
Let's cut the shit. Slavery in America wasn't just about forced labor. It was about forced birth. America didn't just work enslaved people to death. It bred them. And not like people, like livestock. If the transatlantic slave trade was a kidnapping, breeding plantations were the farm. And I said what I said. After the transatlantic slave trade was banned in 1808, the U.S. had a problem. They still wanted the free labor, but they had no more legal supply. Their solution? Turn black wombs into factories. Breeding plantations, and yes, they were called that, were designed specifically to reproduce more enslaved people. The goal wasn't to grow food, it wasn't to pick cotton. It was to force women to give birth to more product. Because that's what we were. Product. Black women weren't seen as mothers. They were uteruses with a resale value. Their fertility, that was the commodity. And their babies, assets on a ledger. Let's be real. This was organized. Some enslavers forced women to have 10, 12, 15 children. Not out of love, but out of cold-blooded capitalism. Some kept track of their pregnancies like breeding dogs. Black girls, as young as 13, were to kickstart their production. If they couldn't reproduce, they were often whipped, sold, or killed. And don't you dare forget about the men. Black men were used as studs. That's literally the word they used. They were, too, forced to mate with women chosen by their enslaver, sometimes their own family, sometimes multiple women in a row. Consent was a fantasy, trauma was the norm, and the goal was always profit. Virginia, Maryland, and parts of North Carolina became baby farms for the Deep South. And once those babies hit a certain age, they were sold down the river, often with chains still attached to their mother's arms. This is the legacy that birthed America's wealth. Families like the Talos, the Ball family, and others made millions off of children born from these violent systems. Wall Street was built to insure and trade these bodies. And if you're wondering why Black women still aren't believed about our pain, why we're 3 times more likely to die in childbirth, this is the root. Doctors experimented on those same women without anesthesia. Gynecology was literally founded on the abuse of Black wombs. So no, slavery wasn't just labor. It was a full-blown human breeding industry. And if that makes you uncomfortable, it should. Because America wasn't built by accident. It was built with intentional, systemic, with generational torture passed off as policy. And the fact that you can visit some of these plantations today and see wedding venues instead of crime scenes, that tells you everything about what this country values. Not justice, not truth, just comfort for white folks. But we're not going to be quiet about it. We're not going to soften the language anymore. And we're not going to let the history die just because they're ashamed of it. This happened, and now they're going to hear about it every damn time we speak.
It won't come as a surprise to many of you to know that Donald Trump lied once again. He said we were going to go after the employers for hiring undocumented workers, while at the same time telling the Department of Labor, don't enforce that rule. We're not going to go after the employers. and then subsequently announcing on another press conference that we can't go after the farms and the hospitality workers, and now expanding it to not just farm and hospitality, but, quote, other sectors. Check this video out.
No problem. The farmers know them. We're going to put it's called farmer responsibility or owner responsibility, where they're going to be largely responsible for these people. And they know these people. They've worked on the farms for 15 years, and all of a sudden they've... So I have a great, Ron does, Christie does, we have a great feeling for the farmer and for others in the same position. And we're going to give them responsibility for people. And we're going to have a system of signing them up so they don't have to go. They can be here legally. They can pay taxes and everything else. They're not getting citizenship, but they get other things. And the farmers need them to do the work. Without those people, you're not going to be able...
Owner responsibility? Owner? Like, seriously? Do we go from slavery to Jim Crow to right back to slavery? Owner responsibility? These farmers are going to own their workers? And the new legislation that you're going to pass or executive order in is going to give these farmers the right to pay these workers whatever they want? No minimum wage, no work visa to make them legal workers, and they're tethered to that, quote, owner, end quote? Like, seriously? How is this American? How is this the land of the free and the home of the brave? Ham and eggers, wake up. This is what we voted for, America. This is...
Hey, can we just keep that same energy? You know, that same one where everybody's upset over 5 billionaires dying? And we just use that energy to, like, end slavery in America? That would be really great. So basically in Louisiana, there's this place called an Angolian prison. And it's a prison that has a giant cotton field. And the prison encircles, like, the whole cotton field. And they force the inmates to pick cotton. You know, with a gun to their fucking heads. And then as if they're still refusing and they don't run off so they don't have an excuse to shoot them, they put them in a trailer, a metal trailer, hot as shit during the summertime. And they handcuff them so they're lying sideways and unable to move in this fucking trailer. And they let them sit in that trailer and bake in the fucking heat until they decide they want to pick some fucking cotton. So it's not like a choice. It's like a forced thing. So do you think there's like a way or something we can do to like end this? Because it's inside of a maximum facility prison thing, there's like, I don't see any way of getting like cameras or videos of what they're doing to them. But from what the prisoners are saying, they're being forced to do this against their will.
So what do you think about, blacks loving Donald Trump so much?
Slave master syndrome, white Jesus syndrome. We don't care if the white Jesus wears red or blue. We don't care what side of the aisle that they're on. Black America suffers from battered spouse syndrome envy. And what battered spouse syndrome speaks to is the fact that no matter how bad you beat me up, if I believe I need you in order to survive, I'm never going anywhere. And part of our problem, part of the equation to our problem as American Africans, why we don't do anything on our own, is we are often waiting for the great white savior to come. This is a message that has been rehearsed for us in church. We get it in the media. We get it in the black community. So black people will never, ever abandon their hope of a white savior coming to save them. Donald Trump has no record whatsoever of saving black folks. When people ask me who you going to vote for at this point, neither one of them are going to get my vote. I considered Cornel West because I love Dr. West. Intelligent, strong, good natured, but he's a bunny hopper, so he can't get my vote. Now, when I come back to Donald Trump and Joe Biden, I look at the fact that Donald Trump signed 13 federal death executions while he was president. More than half of them was signed after Joe Biden won the election. Think about that now. Biden gets elected in November, sworn in January. Between that time, Donald Trump executes half of those 13 people. 5 of them were black men, and 2 of those black men were presumed innocent, and their attorneys had introduced a stay of execution to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court turned them down, and Donald Trump executed those brothers. So when I hear black men say, I'm voting for Donald Trump because he's going to bring more money and economic vitality into the black community, I say, what about the fact that he's out here killing black folks, you understand, without no remorse at all? So you got to look at that. You also got to look at the fact that Donald Trump wants to give police 100% immunity.
That's right.
Wait a minute. Look how they're killing us now. Right. So now you're telling me
Anything the police do in their line of duty, they cannot be held accountable for making bad mistakes and bad decisions. And you want to put that back in office? That's thirsty black men worry more about money than a lot.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you are doing great wherever you are watching us from. Have you ever noticed how some of the darkest chapters in history really never disappear? They just come back wearing different clothes. For generations, America were taught that slavery ended in 1865 and that the country moved forward. But what if some of the systems that benefit from forced labor never completely walked away? What if they simply evolved into something that looked different on the surface but served many of the same interests underneath? Today, we are diving into a conversation that has made a lot of people uncomfortable. It involves history, prison, immigration labor, and the question of the benefit when workers have the fewest rights. Before we begin, I want to hear from you. Do you believe America has fully moved beyond systems that exploit people for labor? Or do you think some of these structures still exist in different forms today? Let me know in the comment section. One of the most disturbing parts of the discussion is the history that many people never learned in school. After the transatlantic slave trade was banned in 1808, slavery itself continued. Plantation owners still wanted labor, they still wanted profit, and according to historians, an entire domestic industry grew around the buying, selling, and forced reproduction of enslaved people. Human beings were treated as assets, families were separated, children were viewed as future labor. Women often deny even the basic of recognition of their humanity. That's why many people react so strongly whenever they hear languages that sound like ownership, control, or dependency tied to labor. And that brings us to the present. Across America, there is growing debate about prison labor. Most people know that the 13th Amendment ended slavery. What many people don't realize is that content and exception allow involuntary labor as punishment for a crime after conviction. For years, activists have argued that this exception creates a loophole that has allowed exploitation to continue inside prison. Supporters of reform point to stories coming from correctional facilities around the country where incarcerated individuals work for extremely low wages while generating economic value for government and private interests. Critics argue that when people have little choice, little pay, and face punishment for refusing work, society should be asking serious questions. Is that rehabilitation or is it exploitation? Those questions become even more controversial when reports emerge describing prisoners working in agricultural field under conditions that remind many observers of Americans' past. Whether someone agree with that comparison or not, the fact that the comparison exists at all should be paused. History matters because history teaches us what happens when profit become more important than human dignity. The debate doesn't stop with prisons. It also extends to immigration and labor policy. For years, industries such as agriculture have depended heavily on immigrant workers. These workers often perform jobs that are physically demanding, sensational, and difficult to fill. As politicians discuss mass deportation, stricter enforcement, and new responsibilities for employers, critics worried about what happens when workers become more dependent on the people who control their employees, housing, or legal status. That concern isn't simple about economy. It's about power. Whenever one group gains extraordinary control over another group's ability to survive, history tells us that abuse can follow. That doesn't mean every employer is abusive. It doesn't mean every policy proposal is malicious. But it does mean citizens should pay close attention to how power is distributed and who has the ability to protect themselves when conflicts arise. The larger question is one that goes beyond the single politicians or political movement. What kind of society do we want to build? Do we want economy where workers have strong protection, fair wages, and meaningful rights? Or do we accept system where people become increasingly vulnerable because they have few options and less bargaining power? The answer to that question affects everyone. It affects citizens, it affects immigrants, it affects incarcerated people, it affects full generation because one rights are weakening for one group. History shows that it rarely stopped there. One lesson appears again and again throughout American history. Progression is never guaranteed. Every generation has to decide what values it defends. Will dignity come before profit? Will human rights come before coincidence? Will we learn from history or repeat parts of it? Those are questions of the center of the debate, and regardless of where you stand politically, they are questions worth asking seriously. Anyway guys, what do you think about this video? Drop your thoughts in the comment section and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like and share the video to help the channel out. See you in my next video. For now, peace.